My name is Oliver Schmidtke and I am a Jean Monnet Chair at the University of Victoria, teaching both in history and political science. And I would like to discuss briefly my field of research, which relates to the management of migration and cultural diversity in the European and North American Canadian context. And that seems to be a field where it is almost a very one-sided and lopsided form of comparison and also of transfer of best practices and then policies from the Canadian context, which seems to be so far advanced in terms of its legacy of 40 years of the point system, of a very targeted form of recruitment of immigrants, irrespective of where they come from, and an ethos of and policy of multiculturalism that has provided a rather welcoming environment for immigrants, as compared to, and that's where we have the European context that has only recently embarked on a modern form of immigration policy, recruiting immigrants with respect to the imperatives of demographic change and economic necessities, and also targeting the issue of integration more forcefully. So you could argue that clearly the learning process is very one-sided. It is an adoption of best practice from the Canadian context. But I would like to allude to one recent field of research in which indeed we find very similar tendencies, and one in which a debate between the both transatlantic sides can generate on both sides of the Atlantic very fruitful insight into best practices and policies that can be used to improve the situation of immigrants in Western societies. And what I'm talking about is that both in Canada and Europe we have an evolving form of multi-level governance. And traditionally we're very much used to thinking about immigration-related issues that this is being targeted at the federal level. And indeed, the nation state defines who comes in, who should be invited as an immigrant. And the whole process of selection is done almost exclusively. Canada is now changing this a bit with the nominee program at the provincial level, is done at the federal level. But yet, when it comes to forms of integration, what we find is a very interesting development. Namely that where integration really unfolds and where new policies are needed is at a lower level of government, be it the region, the province, or even more importantly, you could argue, in the urban centers. If you look at the Canadian context, 80% of the immigrants roughly go to the three main urban centers. And you have similar developments in the European context. The destination of most immigrants to find work are the main urban centers around the Western world. What does this mean for policies, for programs that need to also respond to challenges on the ground? And what we see here is a gradual transfer of policy competence and also a form of policy renewal, new programs, new initiatives coming out of the more local or regional context. And my current research project looks at Germany and Italy, looking at the most, if you want, progressive, the most forward-looking regions, namely North Rhine-Westphalia and the Emilia-Romagna. And what we found is, and that might also reflect developments in Canada, is that some of those municipalities and regional authorities have developed very progressive, very interesting approaches to allowing for a better form of integration, for developing into more welcoming communities, in spite of a rather opposite and even hostile overall climate at the national level that looks at immigrants primarily as a security threat, as something that need to be regulated and so forth. Similarly, in the Canadian context, we have recently the Conference of Municipalities have come up with a plan to bring integration to the forefront of policy development. So what we see is, maybe it has to do with the very structure of an emerging form of multi-level governments at the moment, that competence in this field has spread, and that we can look at the regional and the local arena as an important and also innovative arena for policy developments in this field. And that's where I try to make a contribution both in terms of questioning our dominant thinking along competing national models of managing immigration and diversity, and also in terms of a source of policy innovation, political engagement that contribute to the debate of what successful integration is. Thank you.